All right, folks, welcome to the Taking the Lid Off podcast. Today I've got a special guest, Mr. Kyle Lamb. We're going to talk here. We're going to do a little bit of bantering back and forth a bit, but we're going to get to some military transition advice. I'm sure a lot of you know about Kyle and his adventures, but we're going to talk, and he's got an interesting take, and we're going to kind of talk and focus a little bit about hunting. I've always been interested in hunting, obviously. But it's something that I want to get into more myself. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get started, Kyle, first of all, welcome. And thank you so much for being here this morning, giving me some of your time. Just give for the two listeners out of my 5 that don't know who you are, let's give them a brief intro.
All right. So I'm a former special operations guy. I spent 21 years in the Army and got out, started a company called VTAC Tactics, and I do tactical training and shooting instruction, leadership training, and then we sell products through our site, VikingTactics.com, and then I do consulting for some other folks in this same kind of space, SIG and Leupold, and work with some other companies like that. And I guess that's what I do. My time in the Army, I was started out as a paratrooper and in the 82nd, much like you, except I was a commo dude. I was not an infantry guy, and then I ended up going to the Q course, became a 18 Echo Special Forces Communication Sergeant, and then from there, the rest is history, I guess, so to speak. But went in the Army just because I didn't want to be a farmer. I don't think I could work hard enough to be a farmer, so I joined the military. And, man, I got to the military, and, you know, something we talked about before we went hot here was finding your tribe. And I found my tribe in the military, and I never looked back. You know, I got to 10 years and I said, man, I've been in the Army 10 years. I can't get out now because I'm halfway to retirement. And, you know, some folks in the military, they look at, oh man, I don't know if I can. Dude, at 20 years, you're retired. Even if you hated your job, 20 years is not a lot of time. And then you get a paycheck for the rest of your life. So there you go.
I was 39 when I retired. I was 39 years old when I retired, and I've got a pension and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's so true. You can stick around and it's worth it. And I actually had a lot of old timers when I would go back home on leave or whatever. I had a lot of old timers just telling me, man, I wish I'd stayed in. And even buddies that I had that got out and all would say, golly, man, it's a lot tougher out here than you think and whatnot. So every time reenlistment came around, I would think about those old timers saying, golly, I wish I'd have stayed in. You need to stay in and get that pension. And that's really was probably about my main driving force.
And I would say, you know, for those that listen to this podcast that are still in the military, what I would say is if you don't like what you're doing in the military, then find a different job in the Army. I mean, or whatever part of the military you're in, because there's so many things that you can do. You know, and if you're like, I'm working with these people and they suck, well, then move up the ladder, go from a regular leg unit to an airborne unit, or go from an airborne unit to a ranger unit or special forces, or, you know, whatever. There's always something that you can do to better yourself. Or at least you think you're bettering yourself. At least you'll have, you know, the adventures that you like. And then if special ops is too much for you, then there's other ways to go down and have jobs that are maybe a little bit more 9 to 5 that would drive me insane, but some people like to have that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever the Army tells you to do, that doesn't mean that you have to do that. I was in a trap around so many people that would get orders for this or that. And I get if you get orders, but you know, if it's something you really don't want to do, there's ways around that. I'm not telling anybody to game the system or whatever, but like I had orders for recruiting. I got out of that because I absolutely did not want to be a recruiter. I was a gunfighter. Drill sergeant, I had orders for drill sergeant, and I was a single parent at the time, and I knew being a drill sergeant was not going to be a good life for me as a single parent. So I found my way out of that. And I won't get into all that, how I did that. It was all legit. You know, so don't just let the Army throw you around here and there either. But I would say you got to be a little proactive. You know, be proactive in your own career. Take ownership of your own career. Don't just sit by and wait for the Army to tell you, or whatever service you're in, to tell you what you're going to go do next. Pick it out, find a path, and make it happen.
Well, some folks will say, well, I can't do that because I'm not smart enough. Okay, so in the Army, all you got to have is like a 110 GT score, and you can do anything in the Army. So go get your GT score up. Oh, I'm not in good enough shape. Well, then go get in shape. Oh, I'm fat. Oh, then go get in shape, and you'll get skinny too. And I mean, I was never skinny, but you can do anything, man. And not just in the Army, but anything that, you know, you really tackle fully with your mind and your body and your spirit and get going, man. You can make it happen. So
yeah, absolutely. So as Kyle mentioned, he's got a lot of things going on. My earliest knowledge of Kyle Lamb, actually, isn't there a picture hanging up of you in Shooter Supply in Fayetteville there?
Probably, yeah. There is.
I think there is, because I saw this picture of this dude in there, and I'm like, well, that's obviously an SF guy or whatever. And then I think looking at some of your material, I recognize that picture from the store there. And that's a gun store outside of Fort Bragg, for those of you who don't know, that is frequented by folks like myself.
Yeah, Dave Mordeketter and Rick Mordeketter were guys that I shot competitively with, and they used to run. Rick used to run B&B Pawn, and I'd go there because they had the best gun stuff. And he and I became buddies, started shooting matches together, and then I met his brother Dave, became buddies. Rick has passed away here a few years ago, but Dave now, once he sold Shooter Supply, he started another company down in International Tactical down in Wilmington, and he does all of the overseas, not all of it, but most of the overseas sales for Viking Tactics. So he's doing that. Plus he sells other stuff for the military and law enforcement around the country and around the world. So yeah, great guys, very knowledgeable. Dave and Rick, they both had like these, they just had these minds. They could remember pricing and this and that, and just, they had it. They're just awesome dudes. So yeah, that's a long time ago, but yeah, that picture might still be there.
Yeah, it probably is. And my first knowledge of you, other than that, was your books, Green Eyes. Was it Green Eyes, Black Rifles, or Black Rifles? Yeah, something like that.
Green Eyes and Black Rifles, and then Stay in the Fight. Yep.
And those are here somewhere. I've got that one and your handgun book. And actually, I didn't even think about this till now, but so one of the things when I became chief instructor at the course that I was working at SWIC, we had, when we would go to the range and do all of our marksmanship stuff, we had a lot of guys teaching different things, and it was confusing for students, right? Like, you know, in any course would be. And so I decided to make an SOP, and came up with this SOP, and then a PowerPoint, of course, like we always do in the military, and put together, okay, I understand you all have all this knowledge and all about how to teach marksmanship and everything, but here's what we're going to teach, line by line. This is exactly how we're going to teach it. You can deviate to get, your shooters that are not the best to work, however, but, and I actually contacted you and was like, hey, can I, because I was putting together pictures and I didn't feel like sitting here taking a bunch of pictures of myself with certain stances and grips and all that stuff. And I'd actually contacted you and said, hey, can I use these pictures for my SOP slides? So I actually used the pictures from those books for my slides to demonstrate, okay, this is what we're teaching.
We get a ton of calls like that from military dudes asking permission, and really, if you're listening out there, you have permission. That's why we wrote those books. And then even a step farther than that, the VTAC barricade, that, there's pictures of that in the books, and we have those plans on our website. That's now incorporated in the U.S. Army's qualification program, is the use of that barricade. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so Leadership in the Shadows, as well as another book Kyle has out there, which I've got a copy of here. And, I got this at a presentation Kyle did for when we were out at SWIC out there at Camp McCall. And then Kyle has the Team VTAC podcast, which I love and listen to every time one pops up. It's usually one of the first ones that I go to. So I highly recommend you checking out Kyle's books, going over and checking out his podcast. And then you can find anything related to Viking Tactics on vikingtactics.com. And then there's the sling as well. So the sling is kind of a standard across guys. I mean, I know a ton of guys. I've got one somewhere as well. I don't have a rifle slung very much anymore. So, I mean, at work, we have the slings we have to use there, which are not Viking Tactics. I've tried to
we
work
need to
on
change that. Yeah, we need to change that. I was going to tell you, before I forget too, the Leadership in the Shadows is now available as an audiobook.
Oh, okay. So are you reading that, or is somebody else reading it?
I'm the guy that read it. So
good.
It's that was a lot more difficult than I thought. But we did that. We had people that kept firing us up about, do an audiobook. And so we did it. We're actually looking at the possibility of, now that technology has changed, we're looking at the possibility of doing an audiobook for the shooting books as well, and then actually doing a new revised version of those, because now you have a capability of putting all the pictures and all that can be on an audiobook, which I didn't think that was possible. But now you got PDFs, and you can, as you go through the book, you can look at all the photos as you go. And so we're trying to get that wired tight as well. It's not going to happen fast, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I'm glad you're the one reading it, because that's for me, when somebody writes a book and then I hear the audiobook and it's not them reading it, it's always kind of a turn off for me. So I enjoy when the actual author reads the book. I've got one book out, but it's kind of a tactical fitness thing. So I don't think I'll be reading that one. It's not really. It's not really, probably more appropriate for a video, but and Kyle is also a sponsor. So I'm drinking today this Black Rifle coffee company. They don't sponsor me, but they do sponsor Kyle. So I'll give them a mention here. This espresso mocha. So I told Kyle before we get started, I don't normally drink this kind of stuff. So I may take off like a rocket. I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I'm about halfway through it, and it's delicious. And it's a good thing I don't have two of them sitting here, because I'd probably get through the second one too.
They need to have a button. When you listen to podcasts or books, you can speed it up if you want to. They may have to slow yours down to understand what you're saying by the end of this. If you get all amped up there,
they might. I might get going. I may have to change my camera angle and do some push-ups or something over here.
That's pretty good stuff, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And admittedly, I haven't tried the Berserker blend, so I'll have to correct that malfunction. But we're going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about transition, as the listeners know. On the podcast, we have guests on, and we talk about transition. And we're not going to go through all the background of Kyle's transition process, but we are going to talk about some possible options and kind of finding that next mission, because I believe, Kyle, would you agree that I think finding your next mission is one of the more important things when you get out, or even prior to getting out, figuring out what that next mission is going to be?
Yeah, and that's something that we often talk about is when I see guys that are military that have gotten out of the service, whether they retired or they just, ETS'd, they lose direction because they don't have a mission focus anymore. In the Army, you don't really realize it at the time, but you're so super focused on the mission, whatever that mission happens to be. And it's not just you, but it's everybody around you is really should and is focused on the same mission. So that being said, you have a great support structure on your left and your right of guys and gals that are doing what you're doing, focusing on that mission. You get out and all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. And what I try to tell people is, when you get out, have a mission. Guys are like, well, a mission, that sounds too military. Okay, then come up with some goofy hipster word that fits you better. But for me, it's mission. It's not goals. I mean, goals, I guess that's not a bad word either, but having a mission. And if my mission is to write a book, then I'm going to do everything I possibly can to write that book. If my mission is to get a job, that's, people right now, they say, oh, times are hard to get a job. No, it's not hard to get a job at all. There's a ton of jobs out there. It just may not be the job that you're after. And sometimes we have to do that. I don't know that working at Lowe's is a bad thing, or Walmart, or, and people laugh at that. Man, those are great, consistent jobs, and they got a good package that goes along with them. So not everybody's going to get out and run Viking Tactics or write books or whatever, just have that focus and have a mission. The other thing I would add to that, if I could, is you got to have a support structure when you get out of the military. So who is that? You get out, do you have friends? If you don't have friends, I feel really bad for you. But most of us have friends that we can talk to, and just getting it off your chest sometimes is a good way to get past that struggle that you're having. And then if you talk about that, well, then either your buddies are going to say, hey, quit your whining, or, oh, hey, that happened to me too. And this is what, hey, talk to this guy because he went through that. And then pretty soon you're going to realize that you got a lot of people out there that are willing to help you just because you're who you are. That doesn't mean you got to be this perfect person. It's just that you're going to attract either those people that were your military buddies, retired military buddies, or new friends that you have, and they'll help you there. And one of the things I like to say, stole this from my buddy Shane Fujinaga in Hawaii, from the Bible, it says, iron sharpens iron. That's us. So if, it's like you reaching out to me. If some dude would have just reached out and said, hey, man, I'm going to do this podcast, and okay, we can talk about that. But when I hear, hey, man, I'm a veteran, all the walls come down. So you're me, I'm you. That doesn't mean that we're the same, but that means that we have something very, very common together, and nobody can take that away from you or from me. You will always be a veteran. No matter if you go on a killing spree and murder 20 people, guess what? You're still a veteran. Right. Or you become the president of the United States, which more than likely none of us veterans will be allowed in there because we're not cut quite incorrectly like most of those politicians are. But just get out there and talk to people. And that goes back to that iron sharpens iron. If you open your mouth and you start talking to folks around you, you'll be amazed at who is standing in your midst. You don't know. Unless you talk about it, you don't know. So I could go out here in local Tennessee countryside, and I'm going to find people that are hunters, fishermen, shooters, military, law enforcement, retired military, retired law enforcement. Those are the people that I want to be around. Now I'm doing a lot of forging. People that do that. I enjoy hanging around with those guys. They don't have to be just like me, but we have common interests, and that will help you with your mission focus. So I went a little bit long there, but I hope that kind of explains that you just got to open your doggone mouth, and people will be there to help you out. We all want to help each other out.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, that was perfect, Kyle. I mean, a lot of what you're saying there, and iron sharpens iron, by the way, is one of my favorites as well. I love that, and it's so true, and it should be true. But a lot of what you're saying there, I think a mistake that guys make is they get out and they think, well, here I am now. I don't know how to do this. And I talked with one of my other podcast guests, Pat Fensom, about this. They think, well, I don't know how to do this. Well, yeah, you do. The military gave you those skills. And just like you're saying, well, some guys don't want to call it a mission. They want to call it whatever because they're not in the military anymore. Whatever, man. Just call it. It's your mission. If that's what you know. And then you have the tools to do this. They're military tools, but you can apply them. So planning, so planning through things. I mean, you could take an op order and figure certain things out, how to, how to accomplish things, or use it in your job searches or troop leading procedures or whatever you want to, there's any number of tools that you have in your background as a prior service member that will help you. You just have to learn. You have to be a little adaptable and find out how to apply those to what you're doing now.
You all have the skill sets. You just have, like you said, you just adapt that to the civilian life, and you don't have to. Here's a question I got for you: is your watch set on military time or civilian time?
Oh, it's absolutely set on military time.
Yeah, man, that was one of the changes. I said, when I get out of the Army, I am going to set my watch on civilian time. That's going to be like that thing that helps me make that transition. Dude, I lasted like a day and a half, and I had to put it back on military time. And I've never looked back and I think the point there isn't about our watch. It's about who we are. If you ever look back and you don't, I don't run around telling everybody I was a military guy. I don't do that. But they figure that out when they see how I act, my mannerisms, what I do for a living. There's a lot of things that make people go, oh, wow, you either are a former military guy or a former law enforcement guy. And be proud of that. There's nothing, if somebody doesn't want to work with you because you got military background, you don't want to work with them either. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And I think the other thing I want to mention right now too is we often forget about our spouses. Your spouse, they don't have to have come from the military to have a military background, if that makes sense. So your spouses are in the same boat. They've been through adversity that they're not going to have to deal with as a civilian. And man, that just makes them a huge asset. So anybody that's out there that's listening that runs a company, doggone, find military men and women and their spouses, and you're going to find people that can do the job there. They may not look as pretty as some other folks. We sometimes are a little rough around the edges, but there's a talent pool there that you can't get that by just being a civilian your whole life.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Kyle, because the wives, the spouses, I say wives, spouses could be husbands, absolutely have a skill set because they have had to deal with, even if the husband or wife, whatever, didn't deploy, they've dealt with that military lifestyle, which can be a tumultuous lifestyle, whether you're deployed or not. It's just very different. And so they have dealt with adversity. They've dealt with, not coming home when you're supposed to because you're stuck at work, just any number of things that, and then the fact that your spouse does a dangerous job and not knowing whether or not they may come home or not, because, in a lot of units, we train hard enough that it's a possibility you could not come home.
Oh yeah.
With some of the stuff that we do. So there's a lot of aspects of that. So that's an excellent point, Colin.
It's been really interesting to see the bias against women too. I never really saw that in the military because I wasn't around a lot of women in the military. But now that getting out, my wife runs VTAC. She's the CEO of Viking Tactics, and men in the tactical community and in law enforcement, military, and some of them, it bothers them that this woman is running this company. And that never has bothered me because, my wife is super, super strong. My mom was a strong lady. I think that, there's an old saying, the hand that rocks the cradle will rule the world. And it's really, really true. Moms and women, they run society basically. So to see that, I guess the point I want to make there is no matter who that person is, man, or even more importantly, woman, they should be respected. And I'll tell you, man, I would hire my wife before I'd hire 99% of the men that I've met because she could outwork them. Not just mentally, but physically, she could outwork most of those guys. So it's interesting to see how disrespectful some of these folks can be. Some major companies, we've dealt with some companies that we still deal with them, and you kind of know where you're at because they're totally disrespectful to her. And in turn, it's made me distance myself from them because if they can't treat her in her leadership position well, then I probably don't want to deal with them. So men and women out there, both of y'all get busy with it. And if you have that issue for the ladies, find another company to deal with because there are companies that respect what you can do and what you bring to the fight. And I mean,
yeah,
my wife's a great example of that.
Yeah. And I would say that's probably a real good way for you to vet clients as well. Cause I mean, you're right. If they don't want to respect her, then I wouldn't want to work with them anyway.
I've had guys, they get on the phone, they tell her, okay, that's fine. Let me talk to your boss. She goes, okay, go ahead. No, seriously, I want to talk to your boss. She goes, okay, that's me. No, who owns VTAC? Well, you're talking to her. And, and then these guys would come to me like, hey man, and I go, what did Melinda say? Well, she said, I go, well, then that's it. That's what she says goes. She is literally the boss. And I think sometimes that's hard for men to understand that hey, she is the boss, period. That's it. And I don't mean that as a husband-wife thing. I mean that as working together. She's running the show. I stay in my lane because I'm very, very good in my lane. She's very, very good in her lane. So she doesn't design products, and I don't do paperwork, and I don't run VTAC. I don't take orders and do all that. She does all that. So it's an interesting dynamic that I see happen, not just to her, but other women out there that they don't quite get the respect, I would say, that they deserve. And I guess for you military dudes, if you're getting out, just realize that there's some really sharp gals out there too, that they know what's going on.
Yeah. I had the fortune of, I wasn't around females very much in most of my career either, but later on in my civil affairs career, I had the fortune of being around some females. And of course we're talking special operations and these females were a little bit of a cut above as well. They had proven themselves, up to this point or whatever. But anyway, man, they were awesome. The majority of them were awesome. And I was a guy, prior infantry guy and all this. I see females coming around. I'm like, I don't know. And man, so that was beneficial for me probably in my transition because I had the opportunity to be around some females, not very many, but some before I got out and got to see, man. And the biggest thing that I saw about females was how their ego wasn't in the way like it is for men.
Yeah.
Men,
we see that on the shooting range all the time.
Oh, absolutely. You see that on the shooting range. And then I used to do a lot more fitness stuff and teach kettlebells and whatnot and all this. And I could teach females both shooting or fitness stuff a lot easier than I could teach males, because if they needed corrections, females, no issue, takes it in, fixes it. Males, a lot of males, there's a little bit of a barrier there called the old ego.
Yep. We all have it.
Yeah. But so I don't want to go real deep, but your transition experience, is there anything that sticks out about your transition experience as you switched over to civilian life? Was there any hurdles or anything there?
Well, I think the first hurdle was just being uncomfortable with getting out of the military and the unknown. And what I would say to that is be scared, be very scared, because if you're scared or nervous, what happens? You have a heightened sense of awareness at that point. And I would say when you get out, you need to be very switched on and a little anxious maybe, because it's a completely different world. So be switched on, be nervous, be a little scared about what's going on. And I think that's going to help you to do better when you get out. I was lucky because by the day I actually signed out of the military, I had about a year of classes already booked on the schedule. So I knew that I would make enough money to survive. I didn't know what was going to happen the year after that, but I knew that at least I had hung out my shingle while I was still in the military so that I could start booking these classes. And then the day that I got out, I was free and clear to go and teach the classes. Our business has transitioned. And I think that's the other thing that I would tell folks is, don't be afraid to start with one job and transition to another job. Now, I really haven't done it quite like that. My job is still kind of the same, but we went from mostly instruction to more product sales. And then I started doing more consulting as well. I always tell guys that getting out, if you can stay very diverse, if you're very diversified, it's going to help you if you're running your own business. So the guy that gets out, and I don't care what that business is, you could get out. I know guys that have got out there, accountants, there's guys that paint houses, there's guys that do woodworking, whatever they do. If you say, I'm going to be a woodworker and the only thing that I'm going to do is make chair legs, you're going to run out of business really fast. But if you make chair legs and table legs and you end up making early American furniture. I've got a buddy of mine, Don Harris. This guy, he was one of my heroes in the unit. I never really got to talk to him because he was like, I'd say the upperclassman, And I get out of the Army and I end up in Colorado and I'm off to the side on this range taking a leak. And this guy goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, that sounds like Don Harris. And I turned around and there he is. And him and another old buddy of mine, and Don, it was, like I said, he's a guy that I just admired. He showed up, and man, I got to talk to this cat. It was like I was talking to my hero, and I told him that. And he's like, yeah, whatever. But I was serious. You know, he was the guy that I looked up to. And I also looked up to him when he got out because he was successful as a woodworker. He does everything. I mean, he builds early American furniture. He does, a buddy of mine that's a SEAL out in Colorado, he said, yeah, I had this guy there putting up some crown molding and he's just perfect. And then I find out he's one of your old mates. And I'm like, Don Harris. He goes, yeah, that's the guy. And I go, yeah. So the precision that he had at work, being the top shooter in the unit, being the top PT guy, being just an amazing dude, he applied that in his civilian life. So, you know, being diversified and working on different things has really helped me. And I think he would probably say the same thing. If you can, you know, and maybe you have 2 or 3 jobs, who knows how it's going to work out for you, but I would say, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get this off my chest, I guess. You also, in a way, have to leave what you were in the military behind. And what I mean by that is you can't go into your every job interview and say, I was a sergeant major and, you know, special mission unit and blah, blah. Okay. People are going to be like, I didn't hear SEAL come out of your mouth. So you obviously didn't do anything while you're in the military. And I say that to all my SEAL buddies out there. They got it made, because if people hear SEAL, they've got, you know, they think, I mean, whatever, it's worked for them, but don't always push your military background, you know, push your qualifications. That's a better way to do it. Nowadays, I'll be day 3 on the range with some people, and they'll come up to me and they go, so what did you used to do anyway? You were law enforcement or military? What's up? So I've made it to the 3rd day of a shooting class. I've never got into that. And to me, that's success, because they came to me because of my instructional capability, not just because of what my resume said. Now, resumes are important, you know, be proud of that, but it's always good to I don't know, another saying I like, and I think I came up with this. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anywhere else, but what I like to say is you can't see the future until you turn your back on the past. And that doesn't mean that we forget about the past, but that means that if we want the future to be good, we've got to look at the future and focus on the future and do good things in the future, not always looking back and, well, I used to do this, or I used to do that. Hey, it's good to talk about that every now and again, but then let's talk about what we're doing now and what we're going to do beyond tomorrow.
Yeah. So I think, man, there was so much good stuff packed in there. And the point of kind of not, you know, throwing the veteran thing out there, not when you do job interviews, all that. One thing that I tell people, and this is a little side tangent here. So I don't watch a lot of TV or a lot of movies, but I'm a fan of the Marvel movies and Iron Man and the Avengers and all that stuff. And I've got a buddy that I talk with about this stuff. But one thing that I related to him the other day, and I think relates to this, is long story short, there's a movie, the latest Spider-Man Homecoming movie. And he's young kid Spider-Man. He's got his Spider-Man suit that he got from Iron Man and all this. And there's a point where he kind of screws up. Iron Man comes, kind of saves the day. And Iron Man had given him the Spider-Man suit that does all this cool stuff. So Iron Man says, hey, this is not working out. I'm going to need the suit back. To which Spider-Man says, no, you can't take the suit. I'm nobody without the suit. And Iron Man says, or Tony Stark says, well, if you're nobody without the suit, then you don't deserve it. And I say that because I try to tell people, figure out who you are without the suit being your uniform. Who are you without the uniform on? And then that's who you need to be. And that doesn't mean that you separate the military life and civilian life. But just like when people tell you writing your resume, try to make the stuff that you did in the military sound, you know, or read like how would civilians read it and understand it. Take your job skills and everything that you learned in the military and put the civilian flavor on that, for lack of a better term. And I look, to each their own, but I'm not the guy who wears around the Operation Enduring Freedom hat or anything. The stuff that I have on my wall here, my little plaques, stuff that was given to me, this is all I've got. I've got my certificates from Donald Trump up there because that's cool. And then my battle flag that I carried on deployments. But I don't have awards and stuff all over my walls. I don't have my certificates. I'm not a coin guy either. I don't have coins. My coins are in a box somewhere. And I'm not saying it's wrong if you do. But what I am saying is learn how to present yourself as you without the suit, without the uniform. So I'd done a leadership presentation here locally with the Pigeon Forge Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things that they had asked me to talk about was hiring veterans. And I had a question about the interview process. And I can't remember what the question about, but it was a story I related to them was trying to, if they get a veteran, if they know somebody that's a recently separated veteran through ETS retiring or whatever, and they're bringing them in to interview them, maybe try to build a little rapport with them prior to the interview, show them their facilities or whatever the case may be. Obviously, they don't have to, but if they could, it would probably be helpful, because I think a lot of vets, when they go into an interview that's set up, it's set up kind of like a promotion board. And some of them think back to times when they were in a promotion board or whatever, and they get tense and they want to set at attention, and hands on their knees and all that kind of stuff. And so, help them be at ease and realize, okay, this is not a promotion board, soldier of the month board, whatever the case may be. And just go ahead and help them relax a bit. But then I tell veterans on the flip side of that, hey, relax. Don't relax, too much, but understand you're not sitting in front of your CSM, and about to get stuff hurled at you if you don't do everything exactly right.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think it's a great point. You've got to separate yourself from your past a bit, but use those tools that you did have from your past.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just be smart about how you do that. Think through the process and then go from there. Why are you qualified to have this job? Well, then absolutely use the training that you've had as a veteran or in the military and tell them about that, because that should speak volumes to them. Have you ever, run an inventory system? Some guys are like, oh, no, I've never. Wait a minute. You've never run an inventory system. You inventoried all your sensitive items for your entire ODA for 4 years. That's a big deal. And people go, no, that's not a big deal. I just went down and checked blocked. Yeah, that's a big deal compared to what civilians, they get there's no accountability. If you go to a manufacturing facility and you can tell which one has been run by organized people and then the ones that are not, because the ones that are run by organized people, everybody's tools are marked so that at the end of the day, those tools all go back to a place. And either that's somebody that's just crazy organized, or there's a military, or maybe they race cars for a living. I don't know. There's something that told them they had to have everything in a place so that they could be more efficient. And I think that's true of you in the military too. Some of the things that they forced us to do, you probably thought it was stupid when you were in basic training, but by the time you got out, you're just doing that just as a matter of that's what you did,
Yeah. Yeah. You have to, especially for like me as a first sergeant, as a prior first sergeant, I had to sit down and look at like what all I had done. And it was, somebody asked me a question at some point that hit me like, well, you've managed budgets and everything, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess, you just don't think of all those things you've done necessarily, breaking them down into separate tasks and then translating that into civilian terms. But in the military, I mean, you've done a lot. And there's so much that can be gleaned from that experience. One reason I enjoy speaking about leadership to civilians is when I talk to them about, I give them the example of being, say an infantry fire team leader, and how, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll ask them in the room, I'll say, okay, how many people have kids here? All right. And they'll raise hands or whatever. I'm like, okay. And how many of you take your kids to work with you as in they are an employee of yours? And there's not very many usually ever. But what I tell them is, okay, as the example of like a young leader, like a fire team leader in the military, it's a lot like raising your kids and take them to work, because you're not only checking their barracks room for cleanliness, that kind of thing, doing the room inspections, checking their uniform, make sure the uniform's put together right, all that kind of stuff, but you're also teaching them how to shoot, move, and communicate and destroy the enemy. So you're handling, and oh, by the way, we don't really do a good job of teaching young men things like doing laundry. So that sometimes as a team leader, you've got to take a guy and go, all right, bro, here's how you do freaking laundry.
Yep.
In the BDU days, for my young days in the BDUs, you teach guys how to iron their freaking uniform.
Yep.
All those things, all the way to close with and destroy the enemy. And a lot of civilians don't understand that we have that level. That's the level of leadership that you get put through in the military. I mean, I've gone with guys to a car dealership to make sure they didn't get screwed over buying a vehicle because they'd never done it before.
Yep.
And again, nothing wrong with working at Lowe's, but I would venture to say the manager at Lowe's has not had to deal with all that level of things with their employees. So it's a depth of leadership that civilian companies, quite frankly, could benefit from, I think.
Yep, for sure.
But let's move on. So we talked about finding the next mission. So I want to talk a little bit about hunting with you. That's something that even before I got out, I said, I need to get into hunting. And so in my mind, there's all the basics of putting meat on the table and all that are benefits. But in my mind, it's a way for me to get back out in the woods, back out in open terrain, patrol somewhat. You're carrying a rifle. You're on a mission. Quite frankly, a lot of what I did and a lot of what we do in the military, some units, is hunting. It's a little different hunting, but it's hunting, and so it's a parallel mission, I think, and it's something I'm interested in. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I hunted ever since I was a little kid, and I there were times in the military it was difficult to hunt. I tried to continue to hunt. Like at Fort Bragg, they had some crazy rules, like drive in, sign out, go hunting, drive all the way back in and re-sign. It was just a pain in the butt to do it. I still did it, but not as much as I'd like to. And then I went to Fort Campbell when I was stationed there, and it was so much easier. So then I could get back into hunting, and I'd never turkey hunted at that point. So I got into turkey hunting, and I deer hunted since I was a kid growing up in South Dakota. But I guess hunting has always been, there's certain things that you might kind of come and go in your life. And then when they go, they just are gone, like maybe stamp collecting or whatever it is that you've done. Hunting and shooting have always been the fallbacks in my life. So I've always come back to hunting. I might not hunt for a year or two in the military, but then all of a sudden I'm able to hunt, and I go full board on it for that, full bore on that for that season. Now that I'm retired, I have the ability to hunt every year and hunt more than I've ever hunted. And I think it does several things. I don't like camping. I mean, you'd never catch me. You would never hear Kyle Lamb say, "Hey, I'm going camping for the weekend." That will never come out of my mouth. But I love hunting and I love fishing. So going in the woods and air quote camping is because I'm hunting. So if I go and do 12 days, my son and I and a few of my buddies, there was 6 of us total, we did 12 days in the Quetico Wilderness up in Canada, walked across the border carrying our canoes, and then we canoed and hiked and fished for 12 days. It was amazing. 1, to have my son with me, and then 2, to be with all these military dudes, almost all military dudes, and just great fellowship with these guys. For my son, it was like he hadn't done 12 days in the woods. So it was that part was a challenge for him. So it allowed me to get close to my son. It allowed me to hang out with my buddies. It helped me to do some great smallmouth fishing. When I go out west to hunt, it allows me to be alone with my thoughts. A lot of the successes I've had as a businessman has been because of hunting, because I've been able to go and clear my head, get away from all the garble of society and go and sit in the woods. And I probably shouldn't say this, but there are times when I go hunting that I don't hunt. And what I mean by that is I'm out there and I've got my bow or I've got my rifle, but killing an animal is the farthest thing from my mind. But I'm out there with nature, which always seems to center me. I've got my notebook with me, writing down my thoughts about what I'm, things that I need to be accomplishing or ideas on products or whatever. And then sometimes it's just a time of reflection too. You can sit and think about your buddies that are no longer with us, or guys that are still with us that maybe are having some struggles, and then think about how you can help them out. It's just a good place to get centered, I think. And it doesn't have to be a 10-day elk hunt. It can be going hunting with your kids in Tennessee, taking them turkey hunting. And that's kind of where the phase I'm at now, where I still love to hunt, but if I can take somebody hunting, it doesn't have to be a little kid. It can be an adult that's never hunted. It's just fun to be there with that person when they do that for the first time. And for some of them, they think success is killing an animal. So for those guys, I kind of hope that they don't kill an animal, because I want them to understand that hunting is about, it is about the journey to get to killing that critter, and then once you've killed something, it's awesome too, because now you get all the work starts then, and you get to bring that meat home to your family. And, we eat a lot of wild game here. This year, my wife had said, you got to go back to Alaska to kill another moose because we're out of moose meat. So last year I went and killed a moose, brought home a bunch of meat, and now she's super content because that's some of the best meat that you can have. So it's good from a lot of different aspects. It's like you said, it is a mission. It's like patrolling and all that. The other thing I like about hunting now that I'm out of the military is that if I want to take both boots off at the same time, I can. If I want to start a big old fire, I can do that. And I think that guys that were in the military, if you think going out and doing a mission in Iraq or Afghanistan, or a training mission at one of the bases around America, that hunting is like that. It can be, but I prefer not to be miserable now. So I'm going to have a tent. I'm going to have a pad to sleep on. I'm going to have a fire. If I get up and it's pouring rain, guess what? I ain't even getting out of my tent. I don't need to, I'm not out there for a gut check. Now, some of these hunts that I went up and hunted Dall sheep with a buddy of mine, Dave Vandenberg, up in Alaska. That was a gut check. That was 12 days that was a rough hunt, just because the terrain is pretty severe. And then it was really, really cold, and we just weren't quite equipped properly because we had spread our gear for 3 different camps. So that was a good gut check, but you remember those, the ones that almost kill you, I guess. But hunting, I mean, taking kids, my grandson has just started shooting a BB gun, and was 5 when he started doing that. And it's fun. It's amazing. And he's going to look back at that time and say, man, my grandpa used to take me to shoot BB gun. He's going to remember that for the rest of his life. And hopefully he'll have fun with that, and he'll continue to have fun as he becomes an adult and keep shooting. And then we should take other people out and do the same thing, and make it fun. I try to tell folks that all the time. Go to the range and don't make it this marksmanship training event their first time. Just have fun. Make sure they're safe and don't shoot themselves, but have fun. And then they'll remember that and go, yeah, I want to do that again. And then if they get serious about it, then they can take it to the next level,
Yeah, absolutely. Have fun with it. Going to the range the first time. Yeah, a lot of people make the mistake. We'll go to the range the first time. Here's this 45 caliber pistol. Let's see how much this kicks you. Here's a Desert Eagle. And that's absolutely the wrong way to go about it. But the hunting things, it's so interesting to me because Yeah, I grew up in the country, so it's not unfamiliar to me, and I understand a lot about it. I just never, like you were talking about at Bragg. What turned me off, I spent most of my career at Bragg, and what turned me off was that whole signing out your area and going out there. I'm like, that just doesn't feel like hunting to me. So I never really got into it there. And then since I retired, only been retired a couple of years, and I've just spent so much dang time between work and renovations on the house that I just haven't gotten into it, and it's a goal now is come this next hunting season is for me to be out there. And I understand too, though, that it's more than just pulling the trigger and putting an animal down. It's the process. It's learning the animals, everything from what rifle and caliber you're going to use to equipment to, what you need to do to take down that particular species. All those things. All right, folks, if it seems a little jumpy, we've had some connection issues. There's some storms. Kyle's in Tennessee. I'm in Tennessee. But we're a few hours apart, and we've got some storms between us. So Kyle, back to the hunting thing. So I want to get into hunting, and let's say I'm starting with deer. What are your recommendations there as far as rifle and caliber, that sort of thing?
Well, so in the state of Tennessee, you can actually hunt with a 5.56 rifle, and I would suggest, and I've killed quite a few deer with a 5.56 rifle because the deer are not especially large here in Tennessee. If you're going to do that, just make sure you get the right bullet. So, something that's going to have retained weight and give you the penetration that you would want, like a Hornady GMX bullet, or really, I mean, there's a lot of bullets out there that will get it done. The Barnes triple shocks, things like that, that'll work. Preferably, you should have something a little bit bigger. My favorite right now would probably be the 6.5 Creedmoor, and everybody's touting the 6.5 Creedmoor. Well, it is a good caliber and allows you to reach out, shoot a little flatter. So if you got folks listening that are in Kansas or South Dakota or whatever, 6.5 Creedmoor is perfect for the deer up there too. It allows you to get up to about 143 grain bullet, very high ballistic coefficient. So they fight the wind, they fight. It's a really, really good caliber. If you can't get a 6.5 Creedmoor, there's so many different calibers that work great. The 30-06, the 300 Win Mag, the 308, or 7.62, as we would call it in the military. There's a lot of really great calibers out there. If you're going to go someplace where you have to stretch it out a little bit and shoot a little bit farther, it's really hard to go wrong with a 300 Win Mag because you have the payload, shooting the heavier bullets, and it can handle the distance. Now, people are going to say, oh, well, there's much better cartridges. Yep, there are. But for the average person, you can go down to your local store and buy 300 Winchester Magnum ammo, good ammo. I'm a big fan of the Hornady ammo. I do a lot of work with SIG, and they're starting to bring it on too. They're starting to add more and more cartridges to their line. But right now, Hornady just crushes it. They've got some great calibers. But 300 Win Mag would probably be my suggestion. There's other calibers superior to that. The 300 PRC is by way superior, but then you're kind of stepping up to a really heavy Magnum cartridge. If you want to shoot larger game, then that's another story. Then you definitely need the 300 Win Mag or something like that. Although I've killed elk with a 6mm Creedmoor, not a 6.5, but a 6mm, which is almost like shooting a 243, but it allows you to shoot a little bit heavier bullet. So I wouldn't recommend the 6mm Creedmoor for elk, but I have used that. 6.5 Creedmoor would be fine as long as you have decent ranges, nothing beyond 500 yards. And then if you do want to stretch it out or have that capability or feel like you can do it, then I would step up to something like a 300 PRC, which is a 300 PRC is, that's what the military has looked at. Some of the special ops guys are actually using the 300 PRC. It's a little bit safer and more reliable than the 300 Norma or 338 Norma Magnum. We'll outrun those. That's a great, great cartridge. I've got an MRAD, Barrett MRAD in 300 PRC. And this is not bragging, by the way. I'm just going to tell you the story. I'm out there shooting with my buddy Z-Man on the other side of town here. We're shooting out to 600 yards. I make 5 headshots on a piece of steel at 600 yards. And he's like, whoa. And I said, no, get down here and shoot. He got behind my gun with my ammo, with my scope adjustments, and he made 5 headshots at 600 yards. This guy is not, I mean, he's a really good shooter, but he's not like a long range guy. 300 PRC is just a very, very forgiving cartridge. So 225 grain bullets at almost 3,000 feet per second. You can get away with screwing some stuff up. And that's why I would suggest a 300 Win Mag for those guys that are going to hunt mule deer or something where you might have to shoot a little bit farther, because if you screw up on your wind call or your hold, hopefully the bullet shoots flat enough and fast enough to bite the wind and not drop off like a 308 would. And then, have a successful hunt there. The biggest thing I would say is get the equipment, get comfortable with it, get good glass. Loophole, we talked about them a little bit. Can't go wrong with that. It's made in America. It's really the only scopes out there that are made in the USA. Get that, and good rifle. I hear a lot of guys think you got to go hunt with a bolt gun. I hunt a lot with an AR. So I've got ARs in 6mm Creedmoor, 6.5 Creedmoor, 308. I've actually got one in 300 Win Mag that I don't hunt much because it's a pretty heavy gun. But those, if that makes you feel comfortable as a veteran having your AR, man, you can get. There's some really, really cool guns out there that you can get. If you go up to a bolt gun, there's also some cool guns, whether it's just your grandpa's Remington 700, that's fine if as long as it'll shoot straight. But there's some really, really high quality stuff out there these days too. SIG, like I said, I work with them a little bit. They come out with that SIG cross rifle. That thing is just wicked, and it's super lightweight too. So it's good for if you're going to pack into the mountains. It's a great gun for that.
Yeah, how's the recoil on that being so lightweight?
It's not bad because they actually have a muzzle brake on it as well. So,
okay.
But the thing is, it doesn't come in any really large calibers. It comes in the 277 Fury, which is their new cartridge that hasn't really been released to the public yet. It's a kind of a military thing. 6.5 Creedmoor and then 308 or 7.62. So none of those are monster tooth loosener cartridges. If that gun was in a 300 Win Mag, it would definitely make you see cross-eyed if you shot that lightweight little gun like that. I've got several Christensen Arms guns that are carbon fiber. They weigh nothing. And it's brutal to shoot some of those if you don't have a muzzle brake. I've got a 375 Ruger that I've killed elk with. And I mean, it's a cartridge you can kill a Cape buffalo with. And if you shoot that without a muzzle brake, I called my wife up one day. I said, I'm about ready to shoot this gun on the range. If I don't call you after you hear this shot, come get me, would you? Because I'm probably knocked out down here. So I shot, and my glasses were hanging sideways on my face. My ear pro was knocked off. My baseball cap was a little cornerways. So I drove back. I called her and said, yeah, I'm good. Went up there, and I got a muzzle brake and screwed that on the gun. And then it was very, very manageable after that. I don't like to hunt with a muzzle brake simply because it's a little bit louder. But I've started hunting with ear pro more and more because it just makes sense. My hearing is jacked up enough that it helps me to have ear pro when I shoot, even if it is a hunting situation. So that's what I do. There's so many different guns out there that I've got. This year I hunted with a 6.5 PRC Gunworks rifle, which was an amazing gun. I was writing about it, so I got to hunt with a gun that I could probably never afford.
Right.
Hunted with that. I've got a Blaser that I really like. That's a straight pull bolt action, which is kind of a weird action, but it's super, super efficient. I've hunted with that. It's nice to take overseas because you can take different barrels with the scopes already mounted. So when you get where you're going, I can throw a 6.5 Creedmoor barrel in to hunt baboons or hunt smaller animals. And then if I want to hunt Cape buffalo, I can throw in my 375 H&H barrel and hunt with that. And that's what I've done traveling over to Africa to hunt, which is a hoot. If guys haven't done that, it's just, that's one of my favorite places to go hunt. It's just a different, elk hunting with a bow is my favorite, but going to Africa is just, it's a whole new experience. And it's a lot of fun, especially if you can take, your family, some of your family with you, or hunt with your buddies or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
there's a ton of hunting. And in Tennessee, we got so many varmints too, so we've got, well, they're not really varmints, I guess, but possum and armadillo. We've got a ton of coyotes, raccoons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that you can hunt around where we live.
Right. Yeah. There's, I've got a pretty decent backyard here. I've got turkey and deer that come up in my backyard, and there was a coyote around all the time. And it's like he knew there was a veteran or whatever living here, because my neighbors would see him, and I rarely ever caught a glimpse of him. I caught a glimpse of him one day. He ran across my yard. I'm sitting at my table eating breakfast, and he runs across the yard. That was the only time I ever saw him. And of course, by the time I could get a gun and get out there, he was long gone. But
yeah.
and I'm in the county, so I could shoot him. But so, yeah. So so really, so to back up a second, scopes. We briefed over scopes, and I know Leupold's your preference. Leupold is a great scope. Look, I went to sniper school back in 2000, and so my long range experience is with 308, and then shooting on a Leupold scope. So Obviously, I trust that brand, as anybody should. But let's back up to power. So if somebody out there is looking for a scope for hunting, deer, elk, whatever, what is any suggestions on what kind of power scope?
If you told me I had to buy one scope for the rest of my life, that's the only scope I could use, I would buy a Leupold VX6 2-12. So it allows you to get down to 2 power, low enough power. 1 power would be better, but 2 power and giving me that 12 on the top end, it's a great hunting scope. Those come with a fire dot, so you can turn the dot on in there. So you got a red dot. You've also got the crosshairs, and then it's got locking turrets. So that one scope, a 2-12 VX6, would be the one pick. Now, if you've got different guns that you hunt with, then I would say get a VX6 1-6. That'll allow you to have that bottom end. Like on an AR, the 1-6 is perfect. It also has a fire dot and a locking turrets and all that. And the locking turrets, some people don't think they need those, but then you decide to go hunt out of a raft in Alaska. You're floating for 2 weeks down a river with your gun beside you. You don't want your turrets just to get spun. Not that that's happened to me, but I have heard some stories. Or you go out hunting and you're going to be on an ATV, or even worse, you're going to be on a horse where you shove that gun into a scabbard. It's nice to have locking turrets. So they make a 1-6, a 2-12, and then they make a 3-18. The 3-18 is a really, really cool scope, but it's probably a little too much scope for most hunters, to be honest with you. I've hunted in Africa with a 3-18, and it helped me out because I did make some long shots on some rather small antelope, but I kind of knew I was going into that. So I had a 300 Win Mag, and I had a 3-18. There's other scopes they make. They make a 3-15, a 2-10, and a 1-5. The VX5 series. That's also a good lineup of scopes. I like the VX6 because it gives you the fire dot and the locking turrets just automatically if you order that scope. And you might be able to get a discount if you're a veteran from Leupold too. I think if you talk to the right people, you can get a discount
right
from them. So that's another positive thing. And once again, they're made in America. I am a pro shooter for Leupold, but I became that pro shooter because I was a big Leupold fan. And I've heard guys say, oh, when I grew up, I had a Leupold on. And I'm thinking, man, you had a silver spoon in your mouth, because when I grew up, there were no Leupolds on any of my dad's guns because we were dirt poor, and I aspired to someday own a Leupold scope. And now, then I got to where I could. We were using them in the military. I bought some of my own, and then I'm becoming a pro shooter for them as well. But they're awesome. They're amazing. I did want to bring up one other thing though. One of the guns that I hunted with this last year that I had more fun with than pretty much all my other hunting, I hunted with a lever gun. And I took I took a 4570, a Marlin, and I forget what the number is, but it's a Marlin 4570. It's got a top rail on it, and I mounted a Delta Point Pro on that. So I had a red dot on this gun so I could make a 200-yard shot if I needed to, which thank goodness I didn't have to. But I took that moose hunting in Alaska, and I made a shot most guys couldn't have made. I mean, there's probably only 2 or 3 million people that could have made that shot. It's a 25-yard, broadside shot on a moose with a 4570 is not real difficult, but that's a great gun to hunt with too. So those, folks that are out there, they got a lever gun hunting with a 30-30. We hear in the tactical community, there's this 300 blackout everybody talks about, and everybody raves about how awesome that is. But when you say 30-30, they're like, oh, I wouldn't hunt with that. But they're the same dude hunting with a 300 blackout, which is a 30-30 really.
Yeah.
So a lever gun's fun to hunt with too. So really, I guess my point on that, going back, if you're going to go buy something, then buy something specific. But if you've already got something, then use what you got. Use what you got sitting there and make it work for you. As long as you can reliably hit the vitals on your target, then go out and hunt with it.
Yeah. So apply some skill to the equipment that you've got.
I'm actually trying to put together a plan right now for this next hunting season, and hopefully the company I'm dealing with is going to cooperate. But I ordered a kit to build a flintlock. I went out and shot some flintlocks with this guy, Jason Gatliff, and his buddy took me out, and I'd never shot a flintlock. And Jason Gatliff, he's the guy that owns Muzzleloader Magazine. He's the editor of Muzzleloader Magazine. I was going to say Guns and Ammo, but Muzzleloader Magazine. And it's a great magazine. It's an awesome magazine. And I didn't know it, but he's big into shooting ARs, but he's a muzzleloader guy. So he contacts me and he's like, oh yeah, I wanted to see about getting in some training and doing this. And then he goes, yeah, and if you ever want to shoot muzzleloaders or whatever. And I said, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I've never shot a flintlock before. I hunted with a muzzleloader and I've killed deer with a muzzleloader, but not with a flintlock. And he's like, well, we got to change that. So here about 2 months ago, right before this whole coronavirus thing got up and running, I went to his place and we shot muzzleloaders. And I got to tell you, I had no desire to be around muzzleloaders, to build a muzzleloader, to own a muzzleloader of a flintlock type muzzleloader. I went and shot with him and his buddy, and I'm hooked, man. I mean, they're beautiful guns. They're just beautiful.
Absolutely.
And it takes you back to really our founding fathers. You can go out hunting with something that Daniel Boone would have hunted with, or Davy Crockett or George Washington. They would have used flintlocks back in the day, and it's just amazing. I'm excited about that because this kit that I've got coming, it's kind of a high-end kit, but I'll have to put this whole thing together and glue it and do the wood and everything. My wife will probably do the finish on the wood for me. And I'm hoping to have that done by this fall. And if I do, a friend of mine, Colonel Lynn Ashley, he's retired now, works for FN. He said that he'll come and hunt deer with me with his flintlock, and we'll make it kind of I know that if you haven't, this sounds stupid to even have this coming out of my mouth because I'm like the modern gun guy, but man, it's just awesome, and it's something I've never done. It's like hunting with a bow.
No, that's cool, man. Not to cut you off, but I'm sitting here thinking, and I need to get started hunting with just a gun, and I'm already thinking, man, that'd be so cool to hunt with a flintlock. Have you?
Yeah, because it's not like this instant, easy gratification, and that's I think why I like hunting with a bow is because one, you get to hunt better seasons with a bow. If I want to have success, I definitely don't take my bow because it's just not. You're just not going to have as much success, but I enjoy my bow hunts as much, if not more, than my rifle hunt. So I think burning this black powder out there in the woods, because that's the other thing. You're going to shoot. You're not even going to know if you hit this critter because you're not going to be able to see him. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm excited, man. There's a video on our Instagram of me. We did a slow motion video of me shooting that gun, and it was, man, it was fun. It was so much fun.
I just got a bow this past year. And part of the reason I got it was because my daughter, I've got a daughter that's 18 now, and she out of nowhere wanted to start shooting a bow. And
Oh, good for her. That's awesome.
yeah, so I got her I got her a bow, and she wants to shoot a recurve, so I got her a recurve bow. And I got myself a compound bow because I've been wanting one forever, but it was my opportunity. I was like, okay, this is the push that I need because I've been wanting to get one. I want to hunt with one. And so I went ahead and got one, and it was a way for her and I to connect as well. But then on the flintlock thing, you're not too far from my neck of the woods up there. Have you ever heard of Dixie Gunworks?
Yeah.
Have you been up there?
No, I haven't. I have not.
So they've got some really cool old guns up there. It's kind of a museum, but they sell guns out of there too. It's in Union City, Tennessee, and that's right next to where I grew up. But they're always at the end. I don't think they're not usually at SHOT Show, I don't think, but they're always at the NRA convention.
Yeah.
They've got that Gatling gun out there.
Yeah, I went to the last. Let's see. Yeah, it was the last. I think it was the last NRA convention because they canceled it for this year. But I'm over there doing my thing. I'm doing appearances at SIG and Leopold and whatever. And my wife comes over. She goes, "Are you done? Can you come with me?" And I go, "Yeah. What's up?" She goes, "I want you to see something." So we start walking through the NRA show there, and she takes me off to this corner of the show, and we're going past the dudes with turkey calls and stuff like that. And she takes me to the old gun section. And I'm like, what are you doing bringing me here? It was amazing. And then at the time, I was looking at the flintlocks that day, and I was like, wow, they're beautiful guns. But like I said, nothing really got me hot and bothered. But then dudes had their old Winchester collections, Winchester lever gun collections, and some single action pistols. And they were just, it's just unbelievable. And at the time, I had just started to do some forging, and there was a lot of hand forged axes and tomahawks and knives and things like that. And I was looking at those, I guess, more for inspiration. I didn't want to really buy it. I wanted to look at it and go, oh, maybe I can make that. And now I'm making some of the stuff that's there. And now I'm going to turn around. I'm going to make this rifle. And I'm not, it's not like I'm making the barrel and making the parts. I'm taking a parts kit. I'm going to put it together.
Right.
It's a Kibler mountain rifle. So it is, like I said, it's kind of a high-end gun. But it's going to be something I made. And I hope I can get out there and get a shot at a deer. It'd be great to kill a deer with and I did that. I did when I was a kid. My dad said, if you want to get another pistol, you need to kill a deer with your black powder rifle. So I went out and killed a deer with my old percussion cap 45 gun, and that allowed me to get a Ruger new model Blackhawk 357, which I no longer have. But I have my original 22 pistol, but I don't have that pistol. But yeah, I'm excited, man. There's always something. There's so much cool stuff out there in the gun community to play around with.
Yeah. Have you heard of Leaper's Forks flintlocks?
No, but that wouldn't be that far from me.
Yeah. That place is more towards your neck of the woods, I believe. But I had looked them. Yep. Yeah, I had looked them up and saw, and that was one of the places, they'll build one barrel and all, if I remember correctly. And
well, yeah, some of these guns, I looked at a couple of guns that Jason had, and you're looking at a gun that costs $20,000.
Yeah.
So but they look, they're period specific. They're everything about them is exactly the way they would have been done 200 and some years ago. So they're works of art. It's not like just buying a bolt gun and throwing it in your truck and whatever. These guns are absolutely works of art. And that's probably why I didn't really care for them, to be honest with you, because I kind of look at guns as a tool. I've got a couple guns that mean a lot to me, and they were my dad's guns. That's really it. I got a lot of guns, but I always looked at them as tools. But I looked at this flintlock. When I get this flintlock done, it's not even going to fit in my gun safe. This thing's got the barrel's like 6 foot long, So It's maybe not that long, but it's pretty long.
Yeah. Yeah, those are cool. I used to tell them like you'll know when I've got money because I'm gonna have guns that'll hang on the wall versus sit in my safe or in my my
Yeah.
nightstand or whatever. Because yeah, I would love to have. And you were talking about lever guns. I mean, lever guns to me are just so cool too. I'd love to have a little collection of nice lever guns and especially some of the old stuff, some of the antique stuff or stuff that's considered an antique. That stuff is awesome.
Yeah, it's went through the roof lately, but there's still some really good guns on the market that you can buy as new guns. And you wouldn't think that they would keep innovating in the lever gun world, but they are. Henry, that's a made in America company. They just came up with a side loading rifle they added to their repertoire this year, which that's why some people didn't like the Henry, was because you had to unscrew the tubular magazine, undo that and load it that way. Well, now they added a side loader. So it's cool to see these companies are still innovating. And then the Marlin stuff is cool. Winchester, I'm not sure if they're still making lever guns or not, but there's some cool stuff out there.
I definitely want to get into some more of that stuff too. I've spent most of my money lately on house stuff, but I'm getting there.
Yep.
I'm getting there. Well, Kyle, we've talked quite a bit. I kind of bring it back around to transition. I'm excited to get started hunting. This season is going to be my year to get started. I'm hoping to do both. I still need to get a gun and scope. And I can hunt with 5.56, but my goal, it may not happen this year, but my goal is to go elk hunting both with my bow and with a rifle, whatever rifle that may be. But I've been looking at 6.5 Creedmoor because it's the popular one, and then looking at the ballistics of it, it's very attractive. So I'm excited about it, and then to get to talk to you about it is great as well. And for those of you who are listening, if you want to learn more about hunting, the Team VTAC podcast is not a hunting podcast, but they do talk about hunting a lot. And I've picked up as much knowledge from there as I have about anywhere, just from hearing you all talk about the different calibers and taking this animal down and hearing about your hunts and whatnot. So
have you seen Viking Chronicles?
I don't think I have. I may have seen parts.
We had a show on the Outdoor Channel for a while called Viking Chronicles, and it's just me doing tactical stuff and then doing hunting. We try to do tactical and hunting in the same show. So we would film some tactical stuff, and then we do the hunt as well. Those shows are now available on Amazon Prime, which pretty much everybody's a member of Prime. So if you go on there and do a search for Kyle Lamb Viking Chronicles, you can watch those 2 seasons for free. Just go check them out, and it's real. It's not fake. So you're going to see us go on some hunts where we don't kill anything. We're still going to have a great time. A lot of camaraderie and some good tactical lessons, I think, on there too that folks will enjoy. But yeah, check out Viking Chronicles. It's out there and it's doing well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll go check that out. I'm thinking maybe I need to bring a videographer along with me on my first hunt and chronicle my beginning.
That takes a lot of the fun out of it, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to deal with all that. Yeah, it's been great to talk about that stuff. And the reason I wanted to bring all this up is because I do think that's something that veterans, if you're looking for something once you've gotten out of the military, I do think hunting would be something that would be good for you in transition, would be at least a good hobby. So if you're in a job that's got you doing nothing like you did in the military, I think if you pick up the hobby of hunting, you would be good to go with that. So
and fishing
fishing as well.
In Tennessee, of course, there's a ton of fishing, and there's one other thing that we didn't talk about that is one of my favorite things to do, and that is bow fishing. I got a boat set up for bow fishing with lights on the side. It's a little jet boat, so I can run in really shallow water. And at night, I can light it up like the baseball field. I mean, I got a generator on there, fire that up, turn those lights on. And the good thing is I hardly ever hit a fish. So it's not like I got to do a lot of work, dragging in fish. I just do a lot of shooting, but man, it's so much fun to go bow fishing. So yeah, try that out too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've never done that, but that's something that sounds awesome. I've seen people do it. I've had buddies in the past talk about doing it, but it sounds just like an absolute blast. Especially, there's a lot of areas in Tennessee being invaded by the Asian carp as well.
Yeah, there's a ton of them around here. We've also there's some other fish you're allowed to shoot here. You can shoot short-nosed gar here, and then you can actually do your take of catfish. But you got to stick to the creel limits for that. But yeah, you could shoot carp all night and nobody's going to ever. There's guys that go out and they shoot a 55-gallon plastic drum full of fish in a night. I'm lucky if I get 3 or 4, but no, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on here too, and I appreciate what you're doing, trying to help out veterans and get guys on the right track. And I think everybody has a little bit of a struggle here and there, but if you have that group of veterans or friends of yours that can help that iron sharpen iron, I mean, get in touch with us, and we try to help folks out. And the other thing too, I do want to bring up 2 things. My wife and I started a foundation called the Stay in the Fight Foundation, which is a 501c3 that is for all people. It's not just for veterans, but anybody that's a working person that has come up short, whether it's with paying rent or it's something like a deductible for insurance, whatever it might be, check out the Stay in the Fight Foundation. It's on our website. If you want to give, that'd be awesome too. But if you need help, just contact us, and there's no red tape. You can just let us know, and we'll tell you quickly if you're approved or not approved. The second thing I want to bring up is Warrior's Heart. Warrior's Heart was started by some friends of mine. Tom Spooner was a guy that I served with, and he and 2 other folks, Lisa and Josh, they started this, and they're helping soldiers. It's first responders, law enforcement, and military that have drug or alcohol dependence and post-traumatic stress, bringing them in. It's a 6-week program. They're having a lot of success there. If guys or gals need help, contact Viking Tactics, lamb@vikingtactics.com, or just the quickest way to do it is go straight to Warrior's Heart, and they will help you out. It's a great, great place. And they're doing this to bring people home. Some folks come home from the battlefield, but they never really come home. And that kind of the motto there is to bring those veterans home. So I've had several of my friends that have had some issues that have went there and have had very good success with the program. So yeah, check that out if you need help. If not, call us if we can help in any way. Definitely help however we can.
Yeah, and and I applaud you, Kyle, for being involved with those and starting those as well. I'll have links to those in the show notes and point people. I'll have the links to those on my social media, wherever, because we've got to help each other. Veterans helping veterans, iron sharpen iron. That's the best way to go about this, I think. And know that you're not alone. And you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Kyle. So if you're having issues, you're having trouble, just reach out. I'm learning more and more every day, just it seems, about as far as resources to help veterans. So there's a ton of them out there. There's a ton of them. There's really no excuse not to get yourself some help if you need it. So reach out. We gotta take care of each other. Kyle, I appreciate your time. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on here to talk. I've enjoyed your podcast for so long, and then some of your other material and whatnot. So it's great to have you on and be able to talk. And I look forward to getting this hunting thing going, and then I'll let you know how that goes or how much I screw up.
Yeah, man. I think, stay in touch with me on that, because if I can help you, and I definitely want to hear the stories, because that's the funnest part about hunting, is sitting around the campfire and hearing those hunting stories, and then bringing that meat home. And I mean, it's awesome meat. My wife is just a fabulous cook for wild game. And I mean, she makes all kinds of great stuff with it. So yeah, stay in touch with me, and thanks for what you do. And thanks to all the veterans out there for their service. And I guess the last thing that I always say on my podcast, and I'll say it here, is God bless America, and God bless you veterans for what you've done.
I love it. God bless America. Thanks, Kyle.